Hello there, space travelers, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Ya Toys. Yeah, that's the acronym. I didn't really think that one through. It's just kind of silly, which it works because I do love absurdist humor and just being silly and stupid. And so, that works for a profound podcast to also have a silly acronym. It really encapsulates me very well. I have a very serious side and a very absurd side, and many in between, but those are my two dominants. So I think that's what makes me a complex and polarizing character to people in my life, because they're not sure if they're going to get lighthearted, jovial, in the flow, funny David, or tense, uptight, judgmental, stressed, and anxious David. And I'm happy to say that the latter has been taking a backseat a lot more lately, and that I found a lot more peace and understanding. And a big part of that has been channelings. The NDEs were like the appetizer, and then the channelings have been the meal for me, which maybe sounds backwards to some folks. It doesn't matter what order is most inspiring to you. It's just that it's moving you in a certain direction. But the NDEs for me were compelling because of the consistency of certain themes within them, like feeling unconditional love and feeling, that this is your home, and understanding the role of each quote-unquote incarnation and all these kinds of things. But, they were all very individually flavored, much like the channelings, but the channelings really get into a lot of question and answer detail, which is why I really, really have been loving listening to Bashar lately. Now, I know Bashar is polarizing, or maybe Darryl is polarizing, because the material is on his website for a pretty decent sum of money per session. Now, the sessions can be like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and I think he charges, between $30 and $45, somewhere in there, per download. But the stuff you can find on YouTube, though, for free, which is being generated in high quantities by several channels that are just trying to get the info out there and skirt some of the, copyright with how they're editing the videos, in terms of like not having the visual of Bashar or of Darryl channeling Bashar. It's just like a generic background with text. You can find so much of the info there, but anyway, there's people who feel like because he's charging money that he's gatekeeping the knowledge, and that it's just another cult or whatever. But there are people who work on this more than just Darryl. I'm sure he has a team that helps him with recording, editing, publishing things, the website. It's not just a one-man show, I'm pretty sure, at this point. So while it is kind of cost prohibitive, there is a ton of information for free on YouTube, and on the website. He has the formula on his website, and the formula is really the crux of everything that Bashar says. Most often when someone comes to Bashar with a question about a struggle in their life, a frustration in their life, something that's a repeat issue, it almost always comes back to the formula, and not in a way that's like, oh, this guy just can't stop beating his own drum. It's like, oh, because the information within it is life-changing if you actually try and adopt it. So I'm at the early stages of this, and I wanted to read real quick the 5 steps of the formula. And I know we all love a 5-step program, but these are truly, I think, life-changing if even acted on a little bit, even if implemented to a small degree. And I want to say another thing real quick before I jump into the 5 steps here, that in the Bashar channelings I've heard the Christ consciousness has come up, and he's referenced it, and certainly not in any kind of biased way. He's very neutral about being able to present information without judgment attached. That's one of the most remarkable parts about the channelings is, well, for one thing, the Q&As from the audience with Bashar happen in such a rapid-fire way that the answers that Bashar has ready for these complex questions it's not something that Darryl could come up with, or any human being, as far as I'm concerned, can come up with on their own that quickly and have it be a rational thought without pauses, without stutters. I mean, I'm talking about not even an or an in relationship to complex questions about like how quantum mechanics works and how teleporting between star systems works, and he explains it in this super accurate detail and rapid fire succession, and that's compelling to me enough. But on top of that, it always comes back to unconditional love and that we are unconditional love. And again, he mentioned the Christ consciousness. So I feel like the intent is very positive. Some people think, these are tricksters who are trying to deceive us into something, but if they're trying to deceive us into self-empowerment, that's a weird move. Anyway, that being said, here are the 5 steps from the formula that Bashar references all the time. And I think they're worth checking out, which if you're listening to this podcast, you know that it's a lot of just my 2 cents. And I appreciate every single one of you who cares about my perspective. It's, the purpose isn't to go, woo me, look what I know, at all. I really just want to help other people awaken what was awakened in me, what's being awakened, and to be honest and raw, not, try and candy coat everything and act like I'm Mr. Altogether and Mr. Perfect Spiritual Practices, because I'm not. I'm like the anti-spiritual, maybe not anti-hero, I don't know, the black sheep of spiritual podcasting and people who are out there talking about channelings and NDEs and whatever else. I'm just trying to be myself, and it is a little rough around the edges because that's kind of just how I do the human thing. I really don't think that this is my sweet spot from kind of my short conversation with Yeshua a few months back when we were talking about, I asked the question, and this is something I haven't published because it was a private conversation with me and Pamela, which involved some channeling with Yeshua, but I asked Yeshua, am I a light worker soul or am I an earth soul? And Yeshua said, you're a light worker soul, and he laughed really hard when he said this, but you've tried really hard to be an earth soul. And so I can really connect to that idea of I want to be in solidarity with these human beings, but I don't understand their ways and why they do what they do. And so it's very difficult for me to integrate myself truly and be vulnerable because I don't really trust the intent and vibration of a lot of what's going on Earth. But I'm realizing now that it's so much about following the formula and acting on my highest excitement and bringing a positive state to a negative situation so that I can draw from it a positive outcome. And that's what's so empowering about this formula to me from Bashar, is that it's so much about taking ownership and control and not allowing yourself to be victimized because you truly aren't. He says it over and over. Yeshua says this in so many ways, that there is nothing outside of you. You are everything that you encounter. Now, you're not every person because every person you encounter is a unique individual soul and spirit, but the universe is happening all within you. You were generating and manifesting it, and we generate and manifest a certain one based on our collective kind of energy and vibration, but that can all shift. We don't understand that we can literally create a new physical reality with our minds as a collective energy. So that's what we're, I think, moving towards, but it doesn't look so much that way on the outside right now. If you're following the news or anything like that, things look pretty bleak and pretty unpromising for the future. That's why I think a lot of us are expecting some catalytic event to happen, because it doesn't look like we're going to make it too much further if things don't reach some sort of a chrysalis point or a turning point, a whatever point you want to put on it. But anyway, I'm going to stop going down the rabbit trail and read the formula from Bashar. Now, he's been sharing this for 40 years, being channeled through Darryl Anka. You can look it up on bashar.org. So there is free stuff. It's not all paid. And here we go. Step 1. And I'm just going to read these, and I'm going to read them all in order, and then I'm going to discuss them after I read them instead of reading each step and spending, too long on analyzing each step. I'm just going to kind of give my overall thoughts after I read all of them. Okay. Step 1. Act on your excitement, your passion, whatever is most exciting to you in the moment. Do this every moment that you can. Step 2. Do this to the best of your ability. Take it as far as you can go until you cannot take it any further. Step 3. Act on your excitement/passion with absolutely no insistence, assumption, or expectation of what the outcome should be. Step 4. Choose to remain in a positive state regardless of what happens. Step 5. Constantly investigate your belief systems. Release and replace the unpreferred beliefs, fear-based beliefs, and the beliefs not in alignment with who you prefer to be. All right, so Bashar goes into a lot more detail on the formula in a lot of these channelings and just fleshes out for people what that looks like, because a lot of people will take it as, acting on your excitement is moving to a different country and changing careers and doing like only dramatic big things. And he says it can be as simple as choosing what you're going to eat. Whatever gives you the highest excitement in each moment of choice is what you should go with, not what is society telling me, what is my conditioning, what is the guilt inside me driving me towards. It's kind of like unlearning all of what you've learned as a human and tapping into your divinity, which is free-flowing, in the moment, creative. It wants to be enjoying this experience. It actually, the whole point of this was there was a creative spark and a like childlike enthusiasm to create this universe. That's what the Yeshua channelings discuss, is that creator source had this childlike excitement about creating this possibility by creating us as individual spirits that can create our own realities, and watching what happens when we create from our own spark of joy. But we have to organically kind of understand all of the kinks on the way there, I think. I mean, at least the way I understand the way reality works is that when we incarnate into a difficult experience like the human experience, it's because we're choosing to be stretched in our understanding that can only really happen from firsthand experience. It's like taking a class on skydiving versus actually skydiving. It's a big difference, and you don't feel any rush or thrill or have that tangible experience when you're just in a classroom learning about it. It's when you actually jump out of the plane and you have that panic and fear that your chute might not open, or that you might die, or you might break a leg landing awkwardly in the ground. That's the experience that sticks with you. That's what we crave, is firsthand experience. So we come here to do it. We understand this from a certain higher level as far as what happens with cause and effect, and when you do this is going to happen. But until we experience it firsthand, it's kind of an abstraction. So yeah, I get it. But I think I'm done. I think I've had enough learning as a human. But then again, when I hear about open contact being around the corner, and I see all these craft flying around, and the drones and orbs have not stopped in New Jersey, and they're still being seen over military installations, especially those with nuclear capabilities. They're being seen on all over the country, all over the world. I've seen videos from kind of every corner of the earth, and a lot of anomalous activity. And I think it's what Bashar is talking about, that it's a slow roll to open contact, but we kind of have to be warmed up to it, because humanity's been locked into these really limiting, archaic beliefs about who we are and what the world is, and all the religions that we've formed around handing our power over to structures that do not serve us, and to gods that are angry and vengeful and very human in their approach to governing the universe. And so I think we're going to have to be kind of slow rolled into it, so there isn't just mass hysteria and panic. But we're reaching a tipping point where we need some help, or else we might push this thing over the cliff and reach a point of no return with the climate, with geopolitical stuff, with just the sheer amount of resources and money spent on building weapons and then using them to decimate countries that can't really defend themselves. And if you just label them all as terrorists, you're free to kill as many as you want, and the media just signs off on it. I'm not trying to get political and all that, but let's face it, we're at a tipping point where we're just bottomed out with war and with following these old constructs of power, the patriarchy, the matriarchy, any of the systems that establish dominance of one over the other. That time is over soon, I pray. I trust. At this point, I'm actually holding on to the idea of faith again. And it's a little scary, but I think it's really the best option for me, because Bashar talks about this, Yeshua talks about this. We generate our reality based on our thoughts, our intent, what we perceive things to be. So if we're constantly seeing the Earth moving towards a positive reality with open contact and cooperation between us and other species, cooperation with each other, then that's what you gradually shift to. That there's every reality is out there that, the Earth's not going to change on its own. You have to shift to that reality with your intent. It's not like you had to unlock some magic code to understand how to shift realities. You're doing it, according to Bashar, billions of times a second. With every thought, intent, and energetic movement, you are shifting to a different reality that is optional for you. He equates it to each reality is like a single frame of a film, that it's a static picture, but when you move through these realities at rapid speed, it creates the illusion of motion. So we're moving through them at billions of times a second, so there's no stutter or lag, but we can actually shift to the reality we prefer. But it requires, I think, intent. It requires some faith that that's a possibility. It requires you to let go of so many of your in-baked ideas and beliefs about how things operate, and to just be free and open to what your higher mind is trying to communicate to you. What is going to help ground you to this experience, but also elevate you to be able to channel your higher self. It's about creating a complete circuit. I used to think it was just all about enlightenment and to cast off the earth and to see it as a torture and a stain. And now I realize I'm supposed to be grounded into the earth and to see it as an ally and a friend. And once I actually see it that way and the collective sees it that way, we experience it that way. We shift. This is getting into like the collective consciousness and how that can shift reality in a more profound way. I think that's what's going to happen with, the earth shift and all these kinds of things. It's about people embracing that as an idea, as a possibility, and then putting their intent into making that reality happen. I think it's sort of a reinforcing system that, works hand in hand. I don't know how to articulate it. I can understand it in a certain way, and like most things, have a hard time articulating it the way I conceive it in my head. But I think why Bashar is giving us this formula is because we don't have to plan out, the reality we want to be in, or see a version of paradise and map out the way to get there. That's part of the step where we let go of our insistence on the outcome, where we just put out the dream, put out the vision, the goal, and then release all of your beliefs and ideas of what it'll take to get there, and then act on your highest excitement in each moment, and you'll be organically led to that thing if that's what your higher mind wanted you to be doing. It may be that your thinking mind came up with something that sounded really good, but your higher mind had an even better idea, and that's why your plans aren't working out. It's not because you're doing it wrong, or you're not connected, or you're backwards, or whatever. It's because your higher mind knows there's a better possibility out there for you, and it may not allow the things that you think in your thinking mind are what you need. Bashar gets into a lot of that too, and I think that's a really profound point to make, because we often, I think, misplace or misidentify the first thought that comes into our mind with like our spirit or our higher mind, and we still have to use discernment and try and analyze, where did this thought come from? Where did this idea come from? Did it come from anxiety? Did it come from fear? Or did it come from a place of peace and flow and creativity? It's really just about reframing how you view your reality and who you are within it. And, I've been really inspired by this because it's such a direct message. Bashar doesn't really mince words or play around with, he doesn't have the same cadence and sort of energy that like Yeshua does. Yeshua is very, very safe and warm and inviting and more feminine in energy to me. And Bashar is very definitively masculine, but also very loving. A lot of unconditional love to you and these kinds of things, but he's very direct. He doesn't mince words, and he kind of challenges people in a more not antagonistic way, but just like very direct. And some people take that as aggressive. I understand people who have had negative experiences with aggressive men, myself included, are put off by that, which is, I think, why I was initially not drawn to clicking on the videos, because I saw this kind of stern-looking, bald white dude, and I was like, yeah, I've kind of heard from a lot of stern, bald white dudes in my life. I don't think I really want to hear this. And then I actually listened to the material and was like, okay, that's what I get for biasing. I every time I think I've got someone pinned, usually they surprise me, which is why I've learned a lot more lately to let go of just that attachment to needing to judge and size up and be like, oh, this person's that. Like, man, we're so cut off from knowing who each other really is. And if we did know, we wouldn't have these weird, dumb, arbitrary judgments. We would see each other as the perfect, divine, journeying soul that we are. And so I hope that you'll embrace that a little bit, have a little wonder about yourself and ask some more questions. Is this belief that I have, this idea, is this really me? Is this really something I have to attach myself to? Or is this really representing my highest excitement? Or is it representing anxiety and fear? Because sometimes you can confuse those as well. That's something Bashar gets into, is how, we have to be able to discern excitement from fear and anxiety, because sometimes anxiety makes you feel like, I got to do this thing, which is different than the excitement of, I got to do this thing. Woo! Yeah, I went woo girl. But it's all part of the process of just unlearning and relearning. We're born into a matrix, a prison we cannot smell or taste or touch, and we have to organically have the desire to unlearn through experiencing the negative aspects of this setup, to not break free from it, but to reshape it, to alchemize it, to change it from a negative experience into a positive experience. But we can't do that until we collectively decide to, but I think we need a little help. I think that's why Bashar is talking about open contact, and he's specifically saying that the craft flying around that we're seeing now that are, constantly being posted on social media, and, we have to be very wary of AI, of course. AI is getting very convincing with, fake videos that look very real and authentic if you're not super discerning. And so I think that's why we're going to need more direct contact, because, the evidence that is out there can be dismissed as fakery, a lot of it. I've seen enough videos that I'm convinced, enough repetitive types of craft and, movement characteristics and things like that make me not even really in doubt at all that we're certainly not alone, and there's other beings that are out there trying to assist without being directly involved yet. But he mentions that the Pleiadians will be the first that we come into contact with directly, and that their contact will be all about establishing, here's some other ways you could organize your society. Just a suggestion, and it'll be broadcast on our media and everything, where they'll actually directly address us. And I think there will be a certain ease, because they look like tall, white Norwegian people. They have blonde hair, blue eyes. They're tall, they're white. I'm starting to put pieces together of of Nazi Germany having collected UFO craft or experienced some sort of UFO phenomenon themselves, and I'm wondering if they were visited by the Pleiadians and mistook that as, oh, this is what the gods are like. They're blonde hair, blue eyes, tall and white. I am positive the Pleiadians did not tell them, this is the master race, we are the master race, you must assimilate the earth to this race or whatever. I think that was another perfect example of where they haven't visited us much, because we have not typically been able to take away the most positive aspect of what they came here to show us. Like, nuclear technology was meant for energy, but we also turned it into a massively destructive weapon, which was not the intent, apparently. And I'm saying this all, of course, very speculatively. I have no idea. But I'm very fascinated by the subject, and I feel like it's becoming a much more apparent reality with the massive uptick in sightings. And just because the media is not reporting on it anymore does not mean that it's not happening. There are plenty of outlets still showing footage and saying, yeah, this isn't going away. The thing about Bashar is he keeps kind of changing the date for open contact. It's solidly within the next 5 years, but he said that as of last year, I think, or maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember when he started saying that, but it sounds like he always says that, because we're in control of our own free will and choice on where we want the timeline to be, that it's up to us, and we're kind of pushing the timeline back because we're still pretty stuck in fear and all this kind of. But I'm like, well, okay, but we need help. Like, people are stuck in fear because they're in ignorance and they don't know who they are. If someone could, maybe a higher intelligence could come and show us some things, yes, there will be many who take it the wrong way and get offended and feel like they've been betrayed by their religions or whatever. But then a lot of us would be so receptive to a different way to do things that would, hopefully save the earth and save our species and our ability to work together. But, I don't think any of them want to be our saviors. I think they want us to figure it out ourselves. But it's apparent that we're kind of on a crash course to allowing too many, the select elite who really run the show and cause nothing but chaos and destruction for the world to benefit themselves. That has to go away, and we have to be able to put those systems aside. And I think we're seeing the tide change there. I think a lot of the collective consciousness is finally understanding that billionaires and people in power are not there because they're special people or they're gods or they deserve it. Oftentimes it's because they were born into it. They cheated their way into it. They stepped on the backs of exploited workers to get there. I mean, it's very few ethical billionaires out there, in my opinion. And, I know that's a kind of a spicy one now, but I don't really think it is. Like, I've had this feeling for pretty much my whole life that the people who are running the show and in power aren't any better than any of us. In fact, on the average, I would say they're less moral people and more manipulative and honestly get away with murder day in and day out. As long as it generates an increased profit for their shareholders, then they call it helping the economy, even if it's at the cost of hundreds or thousands of lives. It's truly a staggering system that needs massive change. I think anyone with perception can understand that. But how it changes, I think, is through nonviolent non-participation, like opting out of the things that make society tick, like always scrolling social media, always buying crap off of Amazon and Temu and whatever other garbage dealers are out there slinging dirt cheap product, and buying more local, being more invested in our communities, and just all these lofty sounding things, right, that people talk about all the time, but to me are the cornerstones of how we work together and move together towards unity and a higher vibration of reality of the earth. And we begin to incorporate way more of our divine self into this physical reality, which I think the blending of those two things is going to be so friggin' sweet. I don't think we really even have a clue how sweet that could be. But can you imagine being in a mindset where you're not in fear, you're not in survival mode, you probably don't have to eat all the time and worry about everyone else's safety and well-being, and you can just relax into who you are and still have a physical experience, but be able to have a much more direct connection to knowledge and divinity and powers that are beyond, just the basic human set of abilities. Like that, I mean, it sounds like a superhero movie without all of the, good versus evil. And yeah, there's always going to be negative and stuff that we have to choose, but I think once we collectively choose to move to a place where that's not really even relevant anymore, then we experience a world that's truly, by and large, peaceful and blissful. It doesn't mean a bad thing can't happen at some point, but it's always about our reaction to it. So, but Bashar talks about that a lot, how their society basically just finally decided none of that stuff was relevant to them anymore. Fighting, war, division, they just put it aside, and now it's just not even something that they even entertain. So it doesn't exist in their reality because they don't give it any energy. It's as simple as that. So if we stopped giving energy to violence and division, it would literally shift and change, and it would just become something that was a memory of the past, a tool that was useful at the time for whatever reason, for whatever learning we wanted to do about negativity and being a little kid playing in the dirt and the mud when your mom told you not to. And I don't know, that's a bad analogy, but yeah, there was obviously a reason we wanted to experience the density and the negativity of so many of the aspects of being on Earth and in Earth life in this era. But there have also been eras on this Earth that have been magical and harmonious and blissful. Like it happens in cycles. I'm under the impression that this is like the end of the up and down cycles for Earth, that we're about to enter a reality where it's, much more what we want and much less of this, karmic situation. So I don't know. I'm trying to lean into that and trust that and use the formula, use what Yeshua teaches, and see it as a reflection of my own higher mind. That they aren't gurus or ascended masters. They are mere mirrors. They are here to reflect back to us our own divinity. Bashar says this often as well, that he is just a mediation between us and our higher mind, that when we're talking to him, we're actually just talking to another aspect of our higher self. So to me, that's a really profound thing, that, that there is no hierarchy of leaders or, an order of, even if there's a galactic council and all this stuff, I don't think there's like a typical hierarchy of power like we're used to on Earth. So that's why all of our sci-fis and stuff have gotten it kind of wrong, because we attribute human ideas and human structures to the rest of the universe, when I think we might be the odd ones out, or at least one of the very few doing it the way we're doing it. So I'm super excited about a much more inclusive, unified, cooperative type of interaction with those that are outside of us, or not even outside of us, those that we're not currently aware of. I believe there are beings all around us that we can't even perceive, and that we will be getting to a point sooner than later that we can perceive them, and that we will interact with them, and it'll be a very positive and dynamic exchange of ideas and experiences, and I cannot be more excited about it. I think that's my future. If things move at the pace that I'm hoping they move at, I would like to be involved somehow with, first contact. Well, it's not first contact, with some type of contact, and even like a school where you learn about all the different species and maybe help acclimate what Bashar describes as the hybrid children, which are a mix of our DNA and other non-human species, and that they're excited to come live on Earth, but they're kind of waiting out until we get shit sorted out a little bit more first. He said they're the ones that are flying around in the Tic Tac shaped UFOs, which I don't know if you've seen the cigar shaped ones that look exactly like a long white cigar. And, people have misidentified airplanes as those before because they were way too far away and it was a really blurry, video or whatever. And it looked kind of like just a Tic Tac and no wings or tail. But there's been some really close-up videos in the last couple weeks that were from different angles of definitely a cigar-shaped white craft. And so Bashar has said those specifically are ships that carry hybrid children around, and that some of them are already living on Earth in like really, really remote secret spots, but they're trying to integrate so that they'll be ready to join us here in the next 5 to 10 years or something crazy. I don't know if that's going to happen. There's a part of me that's still cynical and says this is all make-believe and fairy tale magic, but then I just look at like what we are and how we got here, and to even have these thoughts and to have the dreams we have and to have the millions of near-death experiences that are all very, mystical and profound and spiritual, and to have all these channelings and have someone like Bashar come through, which is to me very compelling in the way that it's presented. And it just feels like if this was all like some physical accident, why would we even have the ability to tap into these kinds of things? It wouldn't make sense for our evolution or anything like that. So that to me is compelling enough on its own, but you have to make your own decision. You have to decide what you believe and what's exciting and relevant to you and what feels like is part of your organic journey, what you came here to learn. So, all right, I think I'm going to end it here. I can't promise that I'm going to have consistent episodes and like really, amazing content. I'm kind of in this weird space of trying to figure out what do I want to do right now with my life, with this podcast. And I am feeling very much in a place of great transition and anticipation in a way, but I realize I have to make my own reality happen and do what is exciting for me. So I think I'm going to be focusing a little more on trying to find some volunteer work and getting outside my house a little bit. I think I've been a little too cooped up the last 3-4 years, working from home and then not working and being at home. It's been great, but there's also a part of me that's ready to branch out a little bit. So I'll keep you all posted. If the podcast just like drops off the face of the earth, then I hate to be negative sounding, but something probably happened to me. As in like an accidental death, not like I was killed because of what I was saying. I don't think I'm that important. In terms of, oh, I do think I'm that important, but I don't think I'm that important in the eyes of anyone who would care about what I'm saying, is what I meant by that. But yeah, if I drop off the face of the earth, then maybe something happened, but I'll let y'all know if I end this podcast. I don't really want to do that, but I'm kind of having a hard time feeling motivated right now to get a bunch of guests lined up and do a bunch of things that I initially wanted to do. I don't know. I guess I thought maybe if I was meant to be doing this, then the numbers would kind of be a little better, but maybe that's just me being unrealistic about a oversaturated market. I mean, I know everyone and their mom has a podcast now. It's kind of like the cliche thing, like, oh, you got a podcast, great. So I get it. I get why the numbers haven't been awesome, but I'm so appreciative to each one of you who actually does listen. Like, I don't want to downplay how much that means to me and make you feel like, oh, so I don't matter. Cool. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just, I really just want more people to be awakened to their own light. But I'm also letting go of that. That's not for me to force. That if that's something I'm meant to do, then it will flow organically, and I will move from moment to moment of my highest excitement and be able to step into that in a way that is maybe way more fulfilling and impactful than this podcast, And if the podcast is meant to be the primary thing, then the numbers will go up, and I'll find the energy and the guests and everything will line up. But I'm not trying to force anything. I'm just trying to let it happen and be in the moment and choose what is relevant for me and what is exciting for me. And I hope that you will maybe consider doing the same thing. Try following the formulas as an experiment and just see what happens over the course of a couple months. I'm sure you have to try it for more than a few days to really see the results. But I know that because I've been doing that myself. But anyway, I'll try and be back on here soon. If you have any thoughts, questions, or feelings about whatever, you can email me at youhavethekeys639@gmail.com. You can find me on my lonely, ill-attended Instagram at youaretheoneyouseek. And I trust and I know that no matter what resonates with you or sounds useful or helpful, that you will be drawn naturally and organically to the reality that you prefer. And that if you allow yourself to let go of beliefs and ideas that no longer serve you, you will move to that reality even quicker. And it's going to look different for everyone, but you are the captain of your own ship. We're all here working together, but we're all working towards ultimately the same goal of self-awakening and of reigniting that creative spark, or just being able to have a different approach to creativity in light of our experiences in density. So go in love and light, be well, hug each other, trust that we are vibing up, and namaste.